Hi everyone, how are you? How's it going? We've got something about 2 or 3 minutes here before I will officially start, but hello, how's it going? Hello. All right. Like I said, I have got a couple of short minutes here before we physically get started. I'll hang around and give it a few. Make sure that everybody that did want to come gets the opportunity to get started right up front. So, hey, Kimberly, how's it going? So just in case anybody was just sort of wondering what in the world we're actually going to be doing tonight, I don't necessarily have a strict pattern set out. Tonight is going to be sort of a real basic 101, right? Dot art tools. We're going to go over some best practices, some pros and cons. I want to pick up and show a couple of things that unfortunately I don't see a whole lot of other artists talk about, and lay some things out for you. So, right. And of course, if you have any questions as I'm going along, yell them out. No problem. I don't necessarily need a a big old pause or a Q&A at the end, anything like that. So if you have anything, just let me know. If there's anything that you're wondering that maybe I don't cover or something that you would like to see either here tonight or later, again, just let me know. Let me know. Perfect. All right, I know the lighting's kind of funny right now. Right now I have just one of my work lights on behind me, so it's kind of shady over here and super bright behind me. Once we get started, I'll shift this view down so you'll actually be able to see what I'm doing. All right. So hopefully this was a good time. Hopefully everyone is having a good weekend so far. I know that, sheesh, I don't know. For me, feels like this weekend is already over. I've been so incredibly busy already. Sure, we can do a bit about paint. Yeah. All right, so let me go ahead. I'm gonna get some paint dropped into my palette here. Like I said, I'm not really gonna do a ton of actual design work, so to speak. But I do want to show you guys a few things. I'm going to drop some paint in my palette. I just grabbed some light colors because for tonight I do have some black paper that I'm going to be working with just to kind of show you. So again, nothing spectacular. I'm just dropping some real light colors in here. Yep. Absolutely. If you've got a question, if there is anything that you see that you want to talk about, just type it in the chat. I can see that. Chat is going to be instantaneous. All right, so let me start by introducing myself. My name is Crystal. I am Sylvan Miss Designs. I myself still consider, well, I consider myself to be a beginner too. I've been doing this for, well, I guess it's been just a little over 2 years now. I am, absolutely not a professional by any means, but I started my channel. I started the Facebook group. I started my page all because when I was a beginner, I got so lost with everything that is out there. And I found that most people that are really out on these platforms only want to talk about themselves. The instruction videos that I had seen, I mean, we're not talking about paid videos, right? We're talking about like free YouTube tutorials, were lacking in a lot of ways. At least that's how I felt. one of the biggest things that I felt was lacking was about the tools, because I would see people just putting dot to paper and I had no idea what they were doing. I had no idea how in the world did you figure out what dot size to use, what tool size to actually pick up. How in the world are you just so easily coming across picking up a tool and making it look beautiful? Right? So that's one of the things that I wanted to address. And there's, like I said, a lot of things personally that I felt that weren't getting talked about. And that's where I'm going to go tonight. All right. Like I mentioned, and maybe before you might have dropped in. So what I'll do, yep, I'm just a little tiny me up here for a moment. I'm actually going to be going full screen down here. But yep, I'm going to go ahead and get started. I'm going to introduce you to some of the tools. If you don't already know what they are, I'll explain kind of what they're for and we'll get to it. All right. Hang tight. I'll be back in just a quick second here. All right. So I'm going to move this out of the way. Like I said, all I did was just drop in a couple bits of paint so that we could work on some things a little bit later. Now, as far as tools are concerned, most basic sets that we're going to run into, you're going to see these, okay? And I've got a couple, I'll just drag a couple over here, right? Now, I think for the most part, like I said, the beginner sets that are sold are going to contain these, right? So we've got the main. These are actually originally nail art. These are for not dot art as we know it. These originally started out as styluses for nail artists, right? So go get a manicure and have some beautiful dots painted. These are a little funky, I will admit. I love them to death, but I didn't know any better when I bought them to begin with, and I don't think anybody does. And I'll explain a few pros and cons about these. All right. Then there's these ones, and I just grabbed a couple of each, right? These are not dot tools either. These are not art tools for paint either. These tools here are for clay. They're for clay modeling, right? And I know that people have heard that before, but really that's why these are so dang heavy, right? Because what they're really for is to press clay. So you either have maybe a slight indent, maybe you're making a sculpture and you want a round curve. That's what these are for, and that's why they're so heavy. Unfortunately, because they are not made for dot art and they're not made for paint, sizing on these is going to be funny. Then we've got just our standard, says, the acrylic rods. And then we have a multitude of people now, and I think it's so cool. Finally, we have people that are making tools specifically for what we're doing, right? Now, I use and I like the HDC, which are the Happy Dotting Company tools. And it took me a very long time to buy these because, yeah, they're not cheap. Right? We're talking like I bought this entire set. So these 5, and I think there was 5 of the clay tools, and I think there was probably 5 or 6 acrylic rods for like $8. So $8. And I think these were like $37. So I think about $42 when we got through with it. And even though I had already fallen in love with the art, I'm like, goodness gracious, I can get paint for 50 cents a bottle, and I can get this whole entire set for $8. Really, really, does it matter to spend $40 on a set of tools? And I was hesitant, and it took me a really, really, really long time to figure it out. Okay, but I'm going to tell you that absolutely it's 100% worth it. If you think that you're ready, if you think that you're ready to upgrade from this stuff, do it. Absolutely, 100% do it. Okay. I wanted to touch real quick on a couple of the pros and cons of each of these styles and kind of explain why I say that, why I say that it's actually worth it. And then I'm going to show you some examples of what's going on. Okay, so these ball tips, they're absolutely fabulous at doing walked dots. When you dip these, They're so simple to dip, especially because they have this nice ball. I mean, you have a real guideline for where your paint is supposed to come up to, or can, right? So you can hardly make a mistake dipping and re-dipping. You're always going to get the same amount of paint. They glide off perfectly. And like I said, these are the best tools for walking dots. Okay. Cons on these though, sizing. My set here, every single one of the side here is a 1.5. Okay, so that really means that I only have 5, 6 tool sizes. I don't have as many as you think, right? Because you think, oh, they're double-sided, I have 10. No, you don't, you have 8. Or 6, excuse me. You have 6. And not only that, they're weird. I have a 3, right? Then it doesn't go down in incremental size. It goes to a 2.6. Okay. This one is a 2.1, right? So we're not even going down in a 0.5, right? We're going down 2 into 6. This one is a 1, and then we have a 0.5. And again, all of the other side is a 1.5. Okay, so these are really great for that, but the sizing is odd and the range is not that great. And I'll show you a little bit later why that's a big problem. The bent tips, you know what? They're yes and no. Okay, because especially with these dot tools, realistically try it yourself. The reason that they did the curved tip is because instead of dotting straight up and down, it's a lot more comfortable to do it kind of on the side. However, I played around with that a lot. And I know there's going to be people out there that tell me I'm blatantly wrong. But from my own personal experience, with these kinds of tools, as small as the dot is and as well as they load, it's not needed. You can pretty well safely, quote unquote, do your dots at an angle. You can rest your hand comfortably. And you'll see that if you go back into some of my own videos, you will see that. I do a lot of that. In the beginning, I too tried every single dot to be straight up and down. And you have to really focus. It's really hard, especially when you're sitting down, you're kind of comfortable, you're getting into the zone. I think your hand kind of naturally tilts, just like we would be writing with a pencil. But I've never had a problem. So if you want them, if you like them, if it's a little bit more comfortable to your hand, just so that you can kind of see more or less where the dot is going to fall, because that's one of the benefits as well. Because when you're straight up and down, you might lose sight of where your dot is. Your hand is going to be coming over it based on where you're sitting. So if you do have a curved tool or a bent tool tip, you're going to get a better view of it, but it's completely up to you. I don't think that it's necessary at all. When we're talking about large ones, I rarely ever see ball type tools that are larger than like a 4, 5. Then I might recommend it, but not for these. These ones, like I said, to start with, they're clay tools. The smaller ones are okay, right? They're not bad. The weight isn't terrible. They still fit comfortably in your hand. I do like the grips on these. I do like the material that this is made out of. These are kind of rubberized. And so for that, they're really, really nice to hang on to. But especially when you get to the larger sizes, and I've even put the bigger ones away. This one here is a 13. But they just get so unwieldy. They're so heavy and they're so hard to use. The other part of that is keep in mind that measurements are going to also be somewhat of a problem, because these tools are not made for paint or liquid. So their measurements, like this is a 13. The measurement comes from the center. If you were to chop off the tip of the ball and make it a flat surface, that's where 13 comes from. Are we ever going to be able to dip this into paint and reach that center line? No, obviously not, right? It's a ball. We are going to be dotting on this tip. Do we have a measurement for that tip? No, we don't. So If you're comfortable enough to use them without the sizing, and you sort of know what you want, you played around with them a little bit, you sort of know where they fall on the scale, use them. If you like them, use them. I don't use them anymore. These, honestly, I've just put away. I did label them at one point. You obviously can see I did use them for a very long time. They're kind of stained with some paint and things. Honestly, if it was me, I would never have these in a beginner set. I think it's ridiculous. Sorry, personal opinion. People might have a different one there. I love the acrylic rods. The more I painted, the more I dotted, the more I loved the flat tools. In the beginning, they're extremely hard though. And that's one of the cons here, is because the flat-headed rods, they are very easy to size. Okay, we know exactly what they are. There's no guessing. It's flat. They're going to be measured millimeter across. Okay. Two things though. One, especially these cheap acrylic rods will chip like no tomorrow. I don't care how careful you are, because I'm really, really careful with my tools. I really, I try to maintain them the best I can. And they chip like crazy. And any little chip, especially on the larger ones, the larger you go, the worse it is. Any little chip or defect along the sides here is going to show in your dot. You're not going to have that beautiful round dot. You're going to have kind of a little bit of a funky edge somewhere, right? And it's just not optimal. But these are super light, super nice. And you know what? If you're getting your kids involved in this, because I have a daughter, I have a young girl, and if you want to involve your kids, use these. These are super for kids. Oh my God, I love it because they're light. The bigger ones are a little chunky and I don't necessarily like them just because they don't fit in your hands very well. But especially for little hands, these little tiny ones, they're almost impossible to break. I mean, you're not going to have a kid run and crack these. But I don't like that. The other part is they do take a bit of practice. If you have been painting with a flat-headed tool, whether it's the acrylic rods or maybe just a household item, do you ever notice you get these little funny ridges, little bumps, and kind of funny shapes? Yeah, anybody ever have that when you're painting? That's why. Those ridges come from flat-headed tools. So it takes a practice because, like I said, these ones, the little nail art tools, they load super easy, right? You can just dip it, right? It's not a big deal. You know right what you're getting. The flat-headed ones, not so much. You need to load them up more than you would another set of tools. And especially in the beginning, I think we either have the tendency to do too much or too little. And especially on the acrylic rods, you gotta really, you don't want to overload them. And, I would say if you're dipping and pulling it out and it's already dripping off, then you've got too much. Otherwise, give it a good dip, right? Don't necessarily be afraid of it because two things are happening when you get those little funky lines. And I probably have a piece of paper and I can show you exactly what I mean and why that's kind of funky. Okay. All right, so I've got some of my black paper here. Let me move these. Let me get these out of the way. So here's what can happen. Like I said, this takes some practice, but the more practice you have, the better you are. So if you load this up, right, and you can't even see paint on the tip, right? But it's definitely there. When you lay this down, if you don't have enough paint, you know what? I've been doing it for so long, I didn't even do it wrong. Okay, let's do it this way. See how it's dripping off? Okay, too much, too much. I've got paint just over the ridge. Okay, but if I push this, okay, it's going to stick, right? Gravity is going to pull it down. See, my paper's coming up. That's because it's stuck. That's what causes those funky little ridges, because there's contact. That's caused purely by flat-headed tools. You're not going to find that with the ball head. The other part of it is, like I said, if you don't have enough paint on your tip, then you're going to run into those too. You're going to get funky little lines. You're going to get dots. You're going to get areas that are kind of see-through. So it takes a while to get used to dipping them a little extra and then giving that good kiss, right? And at some point I'll stop and I'll explain what in the world that actually is, because it took me a while to figure out what in the hell they're talking about. What is a kiss? How exactly do you determine that? And I've kind of found a good way, I think, at least, to describe that. So I'll go over that too. All right, so that's the cons of the pros and cons acrylic rods. Okay, then we move into these, and I apologize. You know what? I don't have, like I said, it took me a very long time to even purchase these ones just because of the price. So I actually didn't go overboard, and I didn't buy a whole bunch of different sets. I was working between either Happy Dotting Company and Mark's Mandalas. I have also seen people recommend, and I actually considered for a long time too, leather sets, punching sets, things like that, right? And they're all really fantastic too, but I decided to go with these, so I don't have a whole lot of range of other companies' designs to show you. But okay, so now then we've got stuff like this. I only grabbed what I'm going to use today, but here are some benefits of these tools. To start with, already you can see the range of sizes, right? So there's 2 real sizes, a half and a 1, right? We'll just work on up. I have up to, these go in 0.5 increments, I think up to a 15. I think 15 and a half. Yeah, I think. So I've got every single tool from a 0.5 to a 15.5 minus 13. And so I've got a huge range. That's going to be a humongous game changer for you. If you are just starting and you can't really figure out why your stuff isn't quite matching other people's, we're going to go into that, because size is huge. Size range is real important, and this gives you that. Probably more than you think you're ever going to use, but you really will. You really will start to use the sizes, even though it doesn't seem like a whole lot. Why in the world do I care, about a 2.5 when I have a 2 and a 3? You're going to care. It's going to make a big difference. Okay. So that's pro number 1. Honestly, because I didn't buy a whole bunch of other designer sets from other companies, it's a little hard to kind of give a con on these. I would say Happy Dotting Company, the only drawback to these ones is that they don't clean very well. I thought they did when I first bought them because they're really nice and shiny and slick, but they kind of tend to stain. The other con on these ones, minus, I would say up to about a 3, because a 3.5, even, as you can tell, the point stops. Now we're getting into stuff that is flat tipped. Don't do walk dots with these. Do not take a flat-headed tool and think that you're going to be able to do a full round of walked dots, because you won't. You will have to use multiple tools to do that. Okay. And again, same thing with these ones, because they're flat-headed, you're going to run into the situation where if you're not practiced yet, or if you're not using enough paint, then you're going to get ridges. Simple as that. Okay. All right. So hopefully I answered any questions that you might have run into. And if you've got another one that I didn't cover, yell. Okay. One of the things, like I said, when I first started, one of my questions always was, how in the heck do you just pick up a tool and go around, right? How are you managing? I'm trying to find a good spot to do this here. How are you managing without even thinking about it, to wrap dots around the center, or any ring for that matter. I mean, is there a secret? Is there a formula? And I hate to say it, but the answer is no. There is no secret. There is nothing but plain flat out practice. However, if you're a mathematician, if you really, really, really want it, there is a formula, and it's about a page long. You know, there is an equation to figure out exactly how many dots fit. It's out there, but nobody's going to use it. Let's be realistic. No one in their right mind is going to be doing that. Okay. So here are a couple of things that you could run into. When you start the dots around, this is a 12. Okay, if you didn't see me drop that, sorry. I just used a 12 here. When you start your dots, you're either going to run into A, a gap, or B, an overlap. Okay. That is if you start on one side and just move clockwise or counterclockwise around through it. Okay. What I'll do, I have a whole bunch of bubbles in this one. Okay. But let me go through. And like I said, I didn't pick a great paint for this or whatever. I just grabbed some colors that I knew might actually show up other than my white. So most people that you see are going to do this, right? They're just going to drop in. They're going to grab a tool and they're going to start walking around. No big deal. Everything looks perfectly fine. Now, honestly, unless you've practiced the pattern or unless you're already familiar with the sizes, okay, like I said, a lot of times I do that. I'll go ahead and practice a pattern. I know that size 3 will fit XYZ number of times around a center that is a 10, for example, or whatever. Okay, so I did this really, really fast. I'm not paying much attention, but we're here at the end. And if you don't know any of that up front, what you're going to run into is right here. Well, can I fit 2 dots? No, because if I fit 2, 1, 2, I'm going to end up either overlapping or I'm going to end up with a gap. Okay, if I make this one a little bit bigger, which is what some people do, look, oh, it fits, right? If I didn't, then I'm going to end up with, instead of this dot, I'm going to end up with a gap. Some people will tell you, okay, go most of the way around and then start spreading out your dots a little farther. Valid, right? Nothing wrong with that. In most cases, your dots, like in this one, are going to be so small you may not even notice a difference. Perfectly fine to do that. But if you don't want a gap, you don't want to move a dot larger, you don't want to squish one in, you don't want to do that stuff, then you really need to make sure, in that case, that you follow a compass. All right, and I don't know if very many people do that right now, but I'll show you what I mean by a compass. At least I call it a compass. I don't know. All right, so again, I'm just going to drop a 12. Wipe that off real quick. Okay, so I'm going to go up to, let's do like a 2-5. Now, really, when I'm talking about a compass, really, a compass, okay? So, easiest way to do it as a beginner, to make sure that you're picking the right tools no matter what you pick up. Did you catch that? It doesn't matter what tool you pick up. You can make it fit. You can make it the right tool. So you don't have to wonder, well, I'm going to spend an hour practicing this design over and over and over again just to make sure that I know which tool is going to fit for which row. You don't have to do that, right? So north, south, east, and west. There's a couple of benefits to do this. Not only the fact that you're going to make it fit no matter what. The other part of this is, okay, then I can start to go in between. But why would I do that? Look, my 2.5, it went around, but I have all these gaps now. That's not what I wanted. No, that's really what you wanted. Because as a beginner, if you haven't had the practice, the experience, the time to sit through everything, this is your best friend. Because what you can start to do then is modify this. Okay. For example, you can take and drop in another dot. This is where you can use patterns, other designs. You can start to get creative. These little dots here, I'm putting mine right smack in the middle, but you could either set it in and maybe do another one out. Oops, I moved my hand. Set it maybe closer to the dot, and then you can have 2 in here, right? You can move it to the outside and use it as a landing dot, right? And if you don't know what a landing dot is, that might very well be something that I made up because I use it all the time and I don't know if anybody else does. Okay, but now you've got options. A landing dot is the dot that I use because I don't want to say people. I don't want to say other artists because I don't know. A landing dot, like in this situation, I have 2 here. And let's say the next row that I want to make is going to be walked dots. Okay, and I'm going to increase my size. I'm going to put my walked dot here, the center of my walked dot here. And what that allows for is when you do your walked dots, and actually let me do something like a 2 just to kind of give you an idea. Let's do this proper. Where's my 2.5? Where'd it go? You don't want the bottom of your walk dot squished, right? So again, back to the whole, I'm going to take whatever I have and I'm going to make it fit. Because now, as you go through the walk dots, I have room. Okay. And I'll use this as a pointer. Right here, these last 2 dots would not be possible if I didn't have these 2 for this one to sit on. Why? Because if I don't use a landing dot, like in this situation, my dot is here, right? I'll make it a little bit bigger actually. Okay, my dot is there. It's sitting and almost touching the other 2, right? So then I don't have that room. If I do a walk dots here, sorry, I'm wiping off my tools as I go. Like I said, I kind of get annoyed with that, with myself if I don't. So, okay. So I'm going to take this, and if I go through my walk dots, well, okay. Even though this might look beautiful, and it is beautiful, there is nothing wrong with this. If you want that full, you want that, right? And so being able to have these extra spaces in between, you can do this. Now you could do it separately on larger dots, etc. But again, this is a beginner's paradise right here. This is how you figure it out. Okay. The other thing that you can do too is dry dot. You know, I find this one maybe a little bit easier because a lot of times though you're like, oh, here, will this fit? Maybe this one. That's dry dotting, right? That's essentially just putting it down and trying to see if it'll fit. That works too, but that's how you make it. Okay. Now, like I said earlier, with your tools, you're going to run into some sizing issues. Okay. And I don't know how many of you have actually tried to follow along with a tutorial. And how many times, honestly, how many times have you tried to do a tutorial or follow along with somebody and it doesn't look the same? You either, like I said, you run into dots that are squished or way too far apart, or for whatever reason, it looks funny. Like, raise your hand, seriously. I've done it a million times. I know. It doesn't look the same. And you're like, yeah, that's just because I'm a beginner and I don't know what the heck I'm doing. That's why it doesn't look the same. No. No. Yes, it could be. But I don't think, let me roll these off here. I think it's really, really easy to get lost in the understanding that not every tool is the same size. I'm going to show you an example here. Let's see, what have I got in front of me? This is the largest of the nail art tools. And again, this is a 3. Okay. Do I have my pencil still handy? Let's do a little experiment here. Okay, this is going to be a 3. You know what? Let's just put Nail, right? So this is the nail art. All right, and I'm going to dip this really, really well. Nice and thick. Okay. That's a 3. Okay. Well, let's pull up a 3 from my Happy Dotting set. Happy Company. Happy Dotting Company. Again, I'll load that real well. Does that look the same size to you? It's not. Not in the least. Okay. Over here, I have a 6. Actually, I could probably do it with the Happy Dotting Company tool tools, but here's a 6. Get that loaded up real nice. Let's do a 6. This is a rod. Nice size. Great 6. This is a 6. Oops, it's upside down. This is a 6 in the clay tools. I'm going to load it up really well. Clay. They are absolutely not measured the same. The flat-headed tools, acrylic rods, they're going to be the best as far as sizing is concerned. If you really want to know what size you're working with, use a flat-headed tool because they're going to be straight measured right across. Right? Some paint on there. Easy, right? Like these ones, 12 is 12 millimeters. Period. Right? That's it. I know some companies actually use the sizing of their own, so size 1, 2, 3, ABC. Well, that's not very helpful. And like I said, these ones especially are measured as if you were to cut this in half because it's for imprinting, right? And yes, once you imprint something in clay, the hole that you leave, the width or the hole, the indent is going to be that size, right? So if I use this in clay and I press it into the clay up to the middle point, I'm going to have a 13. Ooh, great. Well, that does nothing for me when I'm painting, right? Understandably. Okay, so we don't want to do that. So for example, one of the things that I'll show you to kind of maybe explain that a little bit better and to show you what'll happen if you're doing a tutorial or if you're, walking through with somebody and you don't have the exact same tool set that they have. This is what it'll look like. And this is how you can fix it, right? So if you go into a tutorial and you come out looking funny, you'll see what I mean here. So I'm going to do the exact same pattern across. Let's start. How about with a 3? Okay, upside down 3. It's not going to be helpful, right? Okay, so let's do our compass. Okay, because let's pretend that we're following somebody along and they say, all right, first row, it's a 3. You're like, I have a 3. Okay. You're like, I've got a 3. Here's my 3. And you suggest that I use the compass. I'm going to use the compass. So we're going to go north and south, east and west. We're just going to do a real simple pattern. Okay. Doesn't necessarily look too bad to start, right? You may not even notice that the dots are a little smaller. Okay, so there's a 3. Let's say, all right, let's go up to a 6. And we'll do the same thing. I'm going to try to be careful because I don't use these rods a whole lot anymore, and this one it actually is chipped. So look at that. Holy moly. Did I do that in a hurry? Okay. Okay. Try not to put my hand in it. Six. All right. Well, I've got a 6 too. And I'm going to dip this real well, right? I'm going to put it up over that middle line. Not that it's going to matter. No, just to show you what I mean here. I'll do it real nice and heavy. And of course I'm doing this in a hurry. I'm not going to pay any attention at this very moment to some of the finer aspects. I'm just going to throw this down real quick for you guys. Okay. Already, Well, doesn't look exactly the same, but it looks pretty okay, right? Not too bad. But you'll start to see, look, I've got all these big gaps here, and there's not very many gaps here. All right, so how about an 8? I got an 8 here, which we can use. I'm just going up incrementally, 3, 6, and then this is an 8 here. These are all getting nicely nested. Okay. Because that's another one of those size things. Being able to increase your size incrementally, either by 0.5, 1, or greater. Like I said, it makes huge differences, big impacts in how your stuff looks. Okay. I guess I can go all the way around. Not going to make much difference, huh? Let's just do, whoops. It stuck right to me. Okay. All right. So that's an 8. And again, I'm going to pick up an 8. I've got an 8. I don't necessarily think that it's, after all the explaining that I've done, that it's probably really physically necessary to show you what I mean with why this makes a difference. But okay, there we go. But look at all the space, all the extra space that we create because the sizing is different. This looks more, and there's nothing wrong with this, please don't get me wrong. This is more of a beginner's work, right? Because if you notice, we all started with these big gaps, right? Every single person that I see that's, that has just started, we all have these huge gaps in the middle. Like we have a ton of negative space. We can do absolutely beautiful work, but one of the issues is that I think, from what I've seen and experienced, the reason we're not getting these gaps closed and we're not getting these smaller gaps in here, or even touching, is because we start out with these sets, right? We start out with $8, I have one of everything sets. And I think that's, like I said, that's one of the things that plays a big part. Sizing is very, very different. It looks the same. I have the same colors. I technically have the same sizes, but mine didn't turn out the same way, right? Okay, so unless you have any questions on that, hopefully, like I said, that explains. Now, the other part of this is, so what do you do? What exactly do you do when you're following a tutorial, you're following a pattern, and you run into this because you don't have any other tools? Go back to this stuff, right? Add in some extra dots, right? Okay, you might be looking to do this pattern, but that's okay. Why don't you put in a couple extra dots? What is wrong with coming in here and putting in 1 or 2? Do you want to do something, trying to think, actually that wasn't a good choice of a 2. You could build a crown here. You can go in and, just like we did up here, you could fill it in. You can go down a half a size. You can add brushes in there, whatever you want to do, right? But sizing is really, really, really huge. Okay. Hopefully, like I said, there's not a ton else. But the other part of the sizing issue is that the starter sets without having the range, if you really want to get nesting going, you want the larger sizes. And what is the nesting? The nesting is this stuff here. Putting one dot, putting one dot in between the two others. Okay. Because for example, with these ones, let's see, where's my 12? I'm kind of running out of my other paint over there. Okay. That's what you're going to end up running into, and what I see a lot as well is, so if you're going to do a pattern, I'm only going to do half here just for the sake of time. Okay. When you're going to be working with these, because the sizing is so close, I mean, the next one down for me, that's a 3. This is a 2.6. The nesting is never going to happen because the tool sizes are so close together that you're essentially going to be running on top of one another, or you might as well just stay with the same size. Actually, you know what I can do? Let me try that again, because let's go smaller. Look at this. Oh my gosh, it's crazy. Okay. And then once I do this one, I can actually try to kind of do this one while I talk. Okay. All right. And so as far as that's concerned, paint, I know that you wanted me to talk a little bit about paint. And while I go ahead and do this one, do you have any specific questions? Like as far as what might be the best paint, for example, something like that? Is that what you were wondering? I'm going to go over here. As far as like a beginner is concerned, I personally use either Apple Barrel or Deco Art. I have some others, but because they're easy to find, they're cheap to get a hold of, they are liquid, water-based craft acrylic. They're beautiful go-tos, straight out of the bottle. You need absolutely no thinning or thickening. At some point when you get a little farther, would you want to thicken them? Would you want to thin them down a little bit? Yeah, absolutely. You might do that just for your own purposes. But that's going to be personal preference more than it is a need. Okay. So what I'm going to try to do here, I did a 0.5. And now I'm going to do a 1. Okay. And I'm just kind of talking as I go through here. So today, the ones that I'm using, and again, I just grabbed these randomly. I've got Deco Art Americana. Again, one of my favorites, just easy go-to. About $1.50 a bottle for these ones. Okay, and then the other two are the apple barrel. Okay. As a beginner, my suggestion is always start with multi-surface paint. It isn't necessary. I do have some satin. I think actually, yeah, this one is actually a multi-surface satin, but I do have some others that aren't multi-surface. And if you buy those, it's not a problem. It's okay. However, because dot art can be done on so many different surfaces with so many different things, for ease, 100% just ease, because as a beginner, you want to be able just to grab a bottle and go, right? You don't want to have to sit and worry about, oh, geez, do I have to thin this? Do I have to thicken it? Am I going to need to do something else to make this work? No, just grab a bottle. The multi-surface is the best because I even use this on glass, and I do about 90% of all of my work on glass. I've done wood, I've done terracotta, I use paper. Yeah, that's going to be the easiest. Oh, goodness sakes, yeah. Like I said, if you're in Canada, I know I've had people tell me that it's notoriously difficult to find things. Some other countries too. And if you're running into that problem, the go-to, had to get a drink, sorry. Honestly, the hardest part about that is I don't have any names for brands, but what you want to look for are going to be craft paint. You want water-based acrylic craft paint. You might look for the words fluid, right? If you can't find that, I do have, if you're part of the group, I do have a Tuesday tip that I actually dropped relatively recently here too, about the paint consistency. Because there's a couple of things that even if, because I know, honestly, I have paint. Actually, let me grab a bottle. Let me randomly grab something out of my little chest drawer here. Okay, look, this is one of the old paints that I used when I first started, and it says premium acrylic, nothing else. There was nothing on the box, nothing on the bottle, nothing anywhere. It just acrylic, and I bought it. Even if that's the case, there are a couple of things if you are in a store and you're trying to find paint that you can actually do, shaking the bottle, looking for certain things. Don't go for anything that is in a squeeze tube. They're great paint. Usually speaking, they are high quality. They're great crafters paints. They're great artist paints. But they're usually not thin enough. They're going to be really, really thick. And unless you're comfortable with thinning stuff and you're ready to do that, avoid things in tubes. Go for bottled paint. When you look for a bottled paint, I don't even know if this is actually going to make a noise. Shake it. Silly, right? Shake it. If when you're shaking it, you should be able to feel the paint move in the bottle. Not like water, right? I mean, you shouldn't be able to do this and it shouldn't flow, right? But if you shake it, you should hear the kind of glug noise that it makes. You should clearly feel that it's a fluid paint, right? I know the dollar store has water-based acrylics too, but yeah, I mean, those are just like shaking a water bottle. Those ones you're going to have to thicken up, and that's kind of a pain. But those are kind of my two favorite. I like Plaid. Plaid as a company has done me well anyways. They're very good on their return policies and stuff like that. So if you're kind of watching what I'm doing over here, I'm doing my best to nest these and get them kind of, where they're supposed to be close enough together. But if I do that, there's not much variance in what I'm doing. The sizes, like I said, are very limited. I did a 0.5, a 1, right? Moved up to a 1.5. That's, the next best increment that I have. Then a 2.1 and a 2.6. Okay, and then the next step up is a 3. For some of you, this probably looks familiar enough. Just trying to use these dot tools to complete some sort of pattern. Okay, but did that answer your question as far as a good what to look for, kind of starting, a couple brands? Craft Smart, I almost forgot. Craft Smart is another one I really like. I didn't for a long time, but I really fell in love with Craft Smart as well. Even the silver, this is just one that I had right next to me. Even the silver that I found with Craft Smart is a good consistency. It's usually the metallics are a little bit thicker, but Craft Smart isn't, and it still looks pretty darn good. So that's another one if you're in the US. Okay. All right, so look at that. I have done a row here of all of these. And it doesn't look bad. But this nesting, it's really difficult. The sizes just aren't there in order to do that. But on the other hand, if I wanted to go into my other set of tools, I have the option of going up. Let me start with something like maybe a 1. And I can jump to a 2 or maybe a 4 or even a 6. I mean, I don't like spending money that I don't have to, right? One of the reasons that I got into this craft is because originally I was not a hobby person. I didn't have a hobby. I didn't have anything that I was super interested in. I didn't know that I would like dot art. And because I didn't know if I was going to like it, and I wasn't really a big hobby person, I'm like, well, I'm not going to spend a ton of money, and let me just go cheap. Right? So yeah, yes. But honestly, if you find that you like it, do it. I absolutely recommend getting another set of tools, because now I just went up to a 2. I can nest these, right? I'm basically, again, nesting is just putting one dot straight in between the 2 below it. And when I do that, I am able, it automatically, without having to think about it, will then line up properly. I don't have to worry about scooting my dots so close together and missing the gap and putting them on top of each other, because I want them to be close enough here that I ignore the gap underneath. Does that make sense? What I can do is just focus right here on nesting, on getting these dots right in between the 2 previous, and automatically they're going to be close enough to each other on the row above it. I mean, that's a 3. If I go up to a 4, it'll automatically start that beautiful outward pattern and not quite look so stacked as this. So can make a pretty big difference in the look of things. I'm kind of throwing these on here, but doesn't necessarily, I think, though. Make sure I dotted those heavy enough. Okay. And automatically you can see too, it's more dramatic. The colors, or the sizes, excuse me, being able to have the extra sizes. I don't have enough of that in my palette, so I'm more at the moment. Makes such a bigger impact than having a whole bunch of small dots everywhere, right? Or maybe just 1 or 2. Okay. And that actually just went up to a 4. All right, perfect. Okay, so I think I've pretty much gotten out of the way any of the basics that I sort of wanted to cover. Like I said, if you have any other questions, give me a shout. I'll go ahead and put that aside for a quick second here. All right, so like I said, hopefully that has helped a little bit. I have another session coming up next week. Well, actually, no, I take that back, 2 weeks from now. I decided to do these every other week, just to be on the safe side. In between, probably, I don't know if it's going to continue to be on Saturday nights or if I'm going to do it on my standard Monday nights. But I do kind of an open Q&A. I just go through and actually do a pattern. It's not necessarily designed as a tutorial, but I will go through some designs working on whatever project I currently have in front of me. And you can always jump in and just ask any random questions that you've got. It doesn't matter. But then I do have another session in 2 weeks. I'm going to be running up some about perfect dots. And then after that, we're actually going to get into the hardcore stuff of walking dots and swooshes. I know that those are like super annoying, probably the 2 biggest elements that people have problems with, and the most common elements. So hopefully that'll be helpful as well. And again, that's in 2 weeks and then in a 2 weeks following. So that's going to take us into April. Like I said, again, I think I have covered the basics of what I wanted to, and hopefully that helps. And if you have any other questions, give me a shout. I think pretty well, I had just put these up on my Facebook page alone, as well as just the Mandala.art for the True Beginner group. So if you're out there on either, feel free to drop any comments or questions there too, because I don't want to miss any. And if we go into the next session, and if you forgot something here, or if there's just something you want to touch on, then I can do so in the next session or even in my Monday night Q&A. So, okay. Well, I certainly appreciate all of you guys stopping by. I really hope you learned something. I hope it was helpful. If you want to see more, I've got more coming. In addition to those ones, again, I'll continue every 2 weeks and we'll try to rotate all of our information out. All right. Well, thank you guys. I'm going to head out here for the night. If you have any questions, we'll catch you in a week to 2 weeks. All right. Take care, guys. You enjoy your evening and have a fantastic rest of the weekend.